Chapter 12, The Dark Resurrection. The world was nothing but pain. Isabella, or rather, Alex Ora Keene, as she had once known herself, drifted in and out of consciousness as the wail of sirens filled her ears. The acid had seared through her flesh, burning everything in its wake, and the once precious gift of sight was stolen from her again in a hellish instant. She could hear the panicked voices around her, the sound of boots slapping against asphalt as paramedics lifted her broken, blood-soaked body onto a stretcher. "Stay with us, ma'am. We're getting you to the hospital." "Don't close your eyes," someone shouted, their voice muffled as if coming from underwater. But all Alex could think about was Isaac, her lifeline, her one chance at a future untainted by blood and death. His screams still echoed in her ears, and no matter how much she tried to shut them out, they wouldn't stop. The memory of the blade tearing into him, of his warm blood splattering across her face, was a never-ending loop that played behind her closed eyelids. She had tried to protect him. She had tried to save him. But she had failed. "Isaac," she whispered, her voice a mere rasp, barely audible over the sirens. But there was no answer. There never would be. Hours later, the hospital. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air. Alex awoke to the steady beeping of machines, her body heavy and numb. Her eyes, if they could still be called that, were wrapped in thick bandages. Darkness surrounded her once more, but this time it was different. It wasn't the comfortable, familiar blindness she had grown used to over the years. No, this was a black void filled with rage and regret. Her fingers twitched, reaching out to the side, hoping for the comforting warmth of Isaac's hand. But all she felt was the cold, stiff sheets of the hospital bed. He was gone. A sob built in her chest, but she swallowed it down. Crying wouldn't bring him back. Nothing would. Instead, she let that sob transform into something else, something darker. Her hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms until they drew blood. The door to her hospital room creaked open, and a rush of footsteps followed. She heard hushed voices, doctors, nurses, and then another set of heavier footsteps. The click of dress shoes on the linoleum floor. "Miss Achebe," a gruff voice said. The tone was commanding, filled with authority. "I'm Detective Thomas Mercer with the Nassau County Police Department. We need to ask you some questions." Alex turned her head toward the voice, though she couldn't see a thing. "What do you want?" she hissed, her voice raw, barely a whisper. "We're sorry for your loss, but we need your cooperation to find out who did this to you and your partner," Mercer continued. "Can you tell us what happened?" A bitter laugh bubbled up from Alex's throat. Cooperation. As if they could ever understand. She was the monster they had all feared, and now, she was the prey. The interrogation, a room filled with darkness. They moved her to a private room hours later, the smell of bleach stinging her nose. The voices of the hospital staff had faded into murmurs as they wheeled her through endless corridors. Now, she was alone with the detectives, Detective Mercer and his partner, a woman whose voice was soft, almost kind. "Miss Achebe, we need you to focus," the female detective urged. "We know you're in pain, but if we can find out who attacked you, we might be able to get justice." "Justice?" Alex spat the word like it was poison. Her voice was gravelly, ragged from the screaming she had done earlier. "There's no such thing as justice. Not for people like me." The detectives exchanged glances. They thought she couldn't see it, but she could sense the tension, the silent communication between them. I was trying," Alex began, her voice faltering. "I was trying to live a normal life. To forget. But they wouldn't let me. Those girls, they were demons in high school, and they came back to finish what they started." Her words came out in a snarl, her hatred almost palpable in the small, dimly lit room. "They took everything from me, again." The anguish in her voice morphed into something darker, more sinister. And now there's nothing left to hold me back. Detective Mercer leaned forward, his chair creaking. If you know who did this, tell us. We can put them away. But we need you to help us, Alex. The use of her real name sent a jolt through her. Help you, she repeated, her voice a harsh whisper. Where were you when they tortured me in that alley? When they cut him open right in front of me? Where were you then? The silence that followed was suffocating. She could hear the steady drip of her the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights. The female detective tried to soothe her. Alex, we just want to. But Alex cut her off, her voice turning cold and venomous. I will handle this myself. The room seemed to drop in temperature as she spoke, her words laced with the promise of retribution. They took my sight, they took Isaac, but they forgot one thing. She leaned forward, even though she couldn't see their faces. I'm still alive. And as long as I draw a breath, I will hunt them down. The road to recovery. The days blurred together. Every moment was filled with a hollow ache that went far beyond her physical injuries. Her body healed slowly, her mind, however, remained shattered. The doctors tried to encourage her to rest, to let the wounds heal, but she was already planning her next move. The hospital staff could sense the change in her, how the air around her seemed to hum with a quiet rage. Nurses whispered behind her back, speaking of the way she would lie still for hours, her face an unreadable mask, only to have sudden fits of screaming in the middle of the night. They had no idea that those screams were not just from the pain in her body, but from the memories that gnawed at her mind, the ghosts that refused to let her rest. Isaac was dead, his warm smile nothing more than a memory now. And for the first time in her life, Alex felt something she had never truly felt before, despair. But despair was just another form of fuel. A dark vow. 2 weeks after the attack, the police returned. They were relentless, asking her to identify her attackers, pleading for any scrap of information that might lead to an arrest. But Alex had given them nothing. Why won't you cooperate, Miss Achebe? Detective Mercer asked, frustration tinging his voice. You said yourself you want them to pay. Oh, they'll pay, Alex said softly, a twisted smile forming on her lips. But not in the way you think. She turned her head toward them, her bandaged eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. I don't need your protection. I don't need your justice. Detective Mercer's jaw tightened. If you take the law into your own hands, you'll become a fugitive. Let them try to stop me, Alex whispered, her voice a razor's edge. If they couldn't stop me before, what makes you think they can stop me now? As the detectives left, the echoes of their footsteps faded into the distance. Alex lay back against the pillows, her heart a cold, pulsing rhythm of hatred and resolve. She had nothing left to lose now. And that made her more dangerous than ever before. She would rise from the ashes. And when she did, those who had wronged her would beg for mercy that would never come.